Welcome back to another episode of Generally Assembled, your favorite House Republican podcast. I'm Jason Gottesman, joined once again by Jesse Topper.
And we are going to do this more often. I know we have been spotty, but I'm here to tell our faithful listeners and maybe viewers, if people can actually are lucky enough to see us, that I'm committing. No, I'm committing. This is a legislative promise.
Oh, one that'll be broken.
We're going to do this. That we're going to do this twice in November and twice in December at the very least. That is my commitment to the people of Pennsylvania.
Our commitment is to recommit to you to do half of what we used to do.
Let's work back up to it.
Yes.
Over-promise. Under-promise,
over-deliver. Yes. Yeah, that's right.
That's usually what the General Assembly does, is over-promise and under-deliver.
No, the General Assembly over-promises and
under-deliver.
under-deliver.
Yeah, that's what we usually do. We're going to go the other way. We're going to under-promise, over-deliver here on Generally Assembled. That might be our new, Chuck, make that our tagline.
Yeah.
Here, Generally Assembled.
Under-promised, over-deliver.
Yes.
All right, so look, there's a couple of things that we should probably unbox from the last time we talked here, because I think it just needs to be said. I was totally right about the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, no. In fact, I told you guys before the Ryder Cup, I was that guy that when we play on foreign soil, I set my alarm clock. I get up at 2 a.m. Like it is. I don't want to say I live for that experience, but when it comes to sports, like I do. Like I so enjoy the Ryder Cup. And when I got up at 2 a.m. and I watched our guys get just absolutely pummeled to the point that we didn't win a match in the very first running. The first person I heard from when you woke up at 6 or whatever was a text from you saying with the score. And I just want to say to everyone who's listening, Jason was absolutely correct about the Ryder Cup. Our guys underperformed. They were outmatched. The European team was better. They were tighter. They just flat out were more ready than we were. Everything he said was wrong. But I will still say this. I am the true patriot, because I never stopped believing till the last day that the United States of America could prevail against the Europeans until finally, it became, until it was over. But you gave up on them early, and that's fine. You were right. But
well, I wasn't rooting for Europe. I just feel like I had a realistic assessment of what the U.S. team capabilities were.
Yeah, but there still has to be, like, I'm not going to,
I wanted the U.S. to win. I was rooting for the U.S. team to win.
You just knew it was going to happen.
But I just didn't feel like they were going to win. I mean, it's kind of like what it's like being a Philadelphia Flyers fan these days.
Nobody was playing better than Victor Hovland in the world right now.
Yeah.
Right? So Rory McIlroy are arguably considered the best player when he's on his game, and John Rahm spent this season part of it at number 1. So they definitely, Matt Fitzpatrick, they had the better, but disappointing effort from, and I love him. I love Scotty Scheffler. I know he feels terrible. Disappointing effort. Jordan Spieth has been a no-show for quite some time now, actually. Usually he's only on his game when he's playing with Thomas. His singles record is abysmal. Colin Morikawa looked lost out there. Max Homa, the American stars were Max Homa and Patrick Cantlay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had the drama that surrounded it with the Cantlay stuff. It just, it was unfortunate because it's such a great event, and I really felt like both in terms of how the team looked from a perception standpoint and how they looked from a real golf standpoint was a problem. I love Zach Johnson. I feel bad that he has to wear this, but he does. He was the captain, and it was just unfortunate. So, yes, Jason was right. I think we've pretty succinctly broken down the problems. But at the end of the day, you need putters. You got to be able to make putts. And right now, Scotty Scheffler, those guys, Morikawa, Schauffele was not putting well. And it was over before it started, and it was a shame.
All right, well, we're going to get back to more golf talk here in a few minutes, but let's maybe talk about some legislative stuff that's been going on, because we are ever more inching closer to a completed budget. We've had some of the piecemeal code bills, the judicial fees were reauthorized this week. In the previous weeks, we had the hospital assessment reauthorized. So there was a couple of things that we continued down the path on. And then today, and really what is a win for the House Republican caucus, after months of demanding transparency measures in legislation, as well as a tuition freeze from these schools. Both of those things passed the House this week, along with the funding for the 4 state-related schools. So that was a big week for us in terms of finally having everybody come around to the position that, the days of sending blank checks to these schools is over. But we also need to make sure, that we're doing right by our students in the schools and continuing to support, reform to make higher education, affordable and accessible.
Right. So I look back at what we did with our state system, which is our PASHE system, not our state-related, it's Penn State Pitt, but our PASHE system, Millersville, Lock Haven, those schools, IUP. The work that went into that transformational change, the integration of that system, when the chancellor stepped in and said, we're going to do this, along with reforms that we in the General Assembly had been asking for years, when that happened, over the next 2 years, the state system received record funding without a peep. And my point to that is, if you start to match, if you demonstrate a willingness to make reforms, if you demonstrate a willingness to work with the people's representatives, that's what we are. So you're not just working with some bunch of guys, you're working with men and women who represent 65,000 constituents. When you start working together, it takes the politics out of the funding. We saw that with PASHE. Nobody, and they've frozen tuition for 5 years. They integrated their system. They made major changes, and we responded with record funding because that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I think we're now starting to move in that direction with the state related. We're not there yet. I still want to see performance-based metrics. I'm sure the state relateds have some questions about some things that we did. That's okay. The bottom line is, because of the leadership shown on both sides, both the legislative and the university side, particularly Dr. Benaputi from Penn State, you're starting to see us move forward in a positive direction. Yeah, it's still a little messy. The legislative process always is. Yeah, there's still questions out there. But we made big strides this week in showing that we're willing to match reforms and funding together to make, at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to make higher education accessible and affordable to our Pennsylvania families. And I think we took a big step with that today.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things I know you've talked about, and I know that Leader Cutler has talked about, and he did a really good visual, now that we have cameras here, I can do it, is that we've been offering degrees up here, but employers have wanted skill sets that are here. And so we need to get better about matching things. Otherwise, people are going to continue to come to Pennsylvania to get educated, and they're going to continue to leave Pennsylvania to get their jobs. And there's a lot more that we can do when we're funding education at all levels to ensure that students are prepared to meet the needs that Pennsylvania employers have to be able to be successful here, raise a family here, invest in our communities here, and make Pennsylvania grow, because it really all starts with education, and education being the most important thing to make sure that we have a sustainable, long-term economic and family plan for the Commonwealth.
And let me be clear. I strongly believe we need to maintain relationships from the state level with these universities.
Sure.
I really believe that. I think because it allows us to have a real impact on those universities and their students. If we lose that, if the state relates just say, you know what, we're going to go private, we're going to be like every other private school, Carnegie Mellon, whatever, we lose a lot of that ability, and I don't want to see that. I want to see this partnership continue. I believe in it. I'm passionate about it. With higher education in total, we understand that almost every segment of our workforce needs some kind of higher education. We just don't all need the same kind. And I think that's what we have to get away from. And look, the administration has talked about this. It's not that everybody needs a 4-year degree or a 6-year degree or a bachelor's or master's. They need something. They need training, right? And some of it is incorporated. We're seeing businesses and companies start to work with some of these schools to develop programs that are certificate-type programs that can get people into the workforce quicker. That's the kind, we have to have those relationships. When I speak, I've had the ability to speak from, Bucknell, Susquehanna to some of our state schools. I was at Shippensburg the other week for a hearing. I'm bringing the same message to higher education, which is that we need, and I've said this at K through 12 level too, we need to have our academia, right? Our academia look outside of the academic bubble. Just like we have to do in Harrisburg. It's easy for us to get inside this legislative bubble and see only things through the eyes of Harrisburg. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same in education. Sometimes these folks have been in education. That's all they've been in their whole life. To be able to step outside, and I've asked them, to school presidents, to those who are in administration, step out of that for a second and look at the bigger picture, and then see what we need to shape into our higher education. And people are doing it. And that's what we're seeing. And so we need to help facilitate that at our level. And once again, I see it happening. I'm excited about it. It's one of the higher education is one of the things I'm most passionate about here. So to have a week like this is very exciting to me, because it's not one of the sexy issues. It's not one of the culture war, although sometimes the culture wars come to, school. But it's not, talking about how we're going to develop it and fund it and those things. It's usually not something that people report on. Well, maybe now we're getting some attention to it, and we can really make some positive change happen.
Well, but I like the attention also that's been put on something else, and you just did it here, and I think we talked a little about this up at the press conference we held after this bill passed, and something we've been saying for a long time, which is, look, everybody has their political position. Everybody has to stake out where they need to be. But when you finally need to get down to solving problems, be they a budget impasse, be they funding for higher education, be they whatever legislative solution that's out there, you eventually, and you really do need to start talking. The more you start talking, whether that's, broadcasting through media channels, as Penn State president did, whether that's individual meetings with lawmakers, whether that's Republicans and Democrats coming together on their own without any outside groups to try to figure out how they can move forward. When it finally comes down to solving the problems, the more you can start to talk, the more you can find out where your differences are and your similarities are, and what you can do to move past those differences so you can find the real problems that better people are. And that's sort of how we got to where we were today.
There's a show on Netflix called The Diplomat. If you've not watched that, I encourage anybody who likes political intrigue to watch that. One of the things that a former ambassador, now this is fictional, but one of the lines that stuck with me in this fictional show was basically the question was being posed to this former ambassador, like, look, how do you work back channels? How do you get foreign, some of this very dicey political work done on foreign soil with people who don't always like us? In fact, some people who hate us. And he said, you talk to everybody. You talk to whoever is willing to have a conversation, because you never know what that conversation could lead to. And that really is this business, right? You have to be willing to talk and be open. You're not going to always agree or like it, and sometimes you're not going to act on it, or sometimes that talk might cause you to act in a different way, but you have to talk to everybody. And if you don't have that communication, you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, and that actually brings up an interesting story of one of our founding fathers that I just got done reading his biography, John Adams, who showed up in Holland. The 8-part HBO series on John Adams is great, but one of the things that it misses is that he went to Holland to secure a loan for the United States government before anybody told him to do that. So he was the ambassador in France with Benjamin Franklin. Things weren't going well there for him. He showed up in Holland without having any papers, any official direction, anybody saying he is an official agent of the United States government, and he did exactly that. He talked to whoever would listen, and eventually secured a major loan for the United States after finally, all the stuff but he started by talking to anybody who would listen to him about America. Right. And that eventually ended up in him being one of the most respected people in all of Holland, and in securing a huge win for the United States at really a crucial time.
And more importantly, what it did, it got the job done.
Yeah.
And that's what, if we can stop with the politics and the egos and really focus on getting the job done, then we can do some great things. And look, I'm not going to say what we did this week was, quote, great by any means, but it was something. It felt like there was something accomplished of value, and hopefully as we move, kind of barrel, not just move toward the end of the year here, because it's coming up quickly. I mean, we're going to be in November tomorrow, that we can see more of this work get done. But, and then look, I credit everybody for coming to the table, and I credit the schools, I credit the leadership on both sides. Again, we know this is not necessarily a done deal, but we have at least moved the ball in a direction.
Well, and when you have a 2/3 vote requirement like this does, and you meet that and you exceed that, look, there are very strong opinions on a lot of the sides of this issue. And there are many people who are happy with the advances that were made but wanted to see more, and they voted no because of that. I think as our whip said today, this was enough to get through today. Mm-hmm. There is more that we would like to see. You've talked about that. But here we are at the end of October, and we got to a place where I think at the beginning of July, many people didn't think we would ever be able to get to. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it, especially with how things go around here. But when you have a 102, 101 difference, it really showed the power of being able to work in a way in which everybody's listening to each other, at least a little bit.
Absolutely.
About how you can get through.
Yep.
Real quick, I know we talked about education funding a lot, but you are our education chairman. And while we have not been in session a ton since we left in July, you personally have been very busy on the Basic Education Funding Commission, as well as your committees holding hearings with appropriations, I believe, a little bit on school funding. So everyone's going to give us a little bit of a
Yeah, I mean,
what's
the
going on there.
funding commission, as we spoke about before, you know, we're still trying to come up with a recommendation. We still have 4 more hearings to go, including one on Thursday. Look, it's a big job. It's not just something that you can tweak a little bit and say you're done. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and it kind of goes along the same lines of what we just talked about. But one of the things that we're hearing consistently that I'm excited about is what we talked about from the very beginning. Regardless of where you feel from a politics or where you land on an ideological perspective, we have established this. It doesn't matter what zip code you're from, you should have access to a high-quality education. We've established that no student should be denied the opportunity to succeed. We have some different ideas on how to get there, but we've identified that. We know there's work to do, and I'm still going to talk about things that I've been passionate about, the regionalization of services, expansion of property tax base, so we're really making this system, because at the end of the day, the number one choice for most of our constituents will still be the traditional public school in their neighborhood. That is still going to be, number one. We have to make sure the other options are available, but we also have to make sure those schools are operating at a high level. And I think we have some path for, a path forward to do that, or multiple paths forward. But we just need to get that recommendation. I believe we'll be given that recommendation about mid-January, and in time for the governor to include potentially some of it in his budget address. That's the goal, and hopefully we get there.
All right, well, let's get back to some golf, because I know you have been a proud papa recently.
Yeah, Josh did a great job at the state
Papa,
tournament.
right? Is it too colloquial? Is it too?
No,
too
I
verbal?
like it.
All right.
Actually, it's endearing. I like it. It's proud papa. I was showing off, real proud of him. He played well. It's funny, Jason, you and I play golf, so we understand a little bit about what pressure is, even when we go out and play for, the generally assembled cup,
Yep.
right? Stand over a 3-foot putt, and you're like, I think you'll just give each other this one, so we don't have to. Watching those kids perform at that level on a college course at Penn State, when all that pressure is on, watch them step up in front of getting introduced and having all these people around and just hit shot after shot. It was pretty impressive to watch. Josh finished in the top 25 and just played really well. I think on the second day, I was there. He hit the first 7 greens in regulation. Couldn't get enough birdie putts to drop, but the fact that he just kept giving himself look, I'm thinking, I don't know that I've hit 7 greens in regulation in a round, let alone the first 7. Now, you were a pretty good golfer in high school. Maybe you did that.
Well,
but
I could still hit 7 greens in a round.
In regulation.
Yeah, in regulation.
In a round, he hit his first 7. Have you ever opened with hitting your first 7?
Yeah.
But when I hit 3 in a row, I feel like I'm on a hot streak.
Yeah.
And it was pretty fun to watch. So, hey, great golfers out there. Congratulations to the kids who won. Representative Tara Probst, her son was also Hunter. He played in the AAA on the AAA boys side. So I ran into her the one day. It was a great event. PIAA does a great job with their championships. Always impressed by the quality that they have. But yeah, it was a great time. And he plays in one more event, and you'll be interested for this weekend. On that Buckeye Tour, which he plays during the summer. It's a summer tour. They take some of the top players and they invite them for a Ryder Cup style event called the Buckeye Cup, and he was selected this year.
Nice.
So he's on one of the teams. So he'll be competing Saturday and Sunday down West Virginia with with the foursome matches and the four ball, and he's
so
all
is it against
excited.
like a West Virginia team? Or
So
is
it used to be Pennsylvania versus Maryland, or Pennsylvania, Ohio versus Maryland, Virginia. Now they've split it into actual teams that are led by the leaders of the. So it's like Team Tory and Team Eric.
Okay.
It's led by the actual, so that they could because Team Pennsylvania just kept winning all the time. Because
Yeah, we did.
well, there's some good golfers, so they split that up a little bit. So that if you like higher education and you like golf, this might have been the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts for you.
Yes.
And if you like neither, then hopefully you at least like the sound of Jason or I's voice.
All right, you can find us where all of your favorite House Republican podcasts are found, www.pahousegop.com/mypodcasts. We're also available on Apple and on Spotify. And you can find us on the web for the video at YouTube. On YouTube at Generally Assembled. Yeah, that's right. Here we are. If you're looking at us, you already found us, and I feel really sad for you. All right, well, until, 2 weeks from now, is that what we said?
At the latest.
At the latest. All right, this has been Generally Assembled. Representative Topper, I'm Jason. And we'll see you all next time.